Welcome back from the afternoon snacks. We have one more session for you at PyCascades, and then it'll be the closing, and then we'll all have to go home, back to our lives. It's terrible. But before that, we have a terrific PyLadies panel, and it's going to be hosted by Tammy, who is going to come out and introduce the rest of the panel. Please give them all a hand.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our panel, talking about experiences and roles within the tech community and open source. We are joined by 4 incredible women who are shaping technology and open source in unique ways, so I will introduce all of them. I'm also on my tippy toes. First, we have Drishti Jain. Drishti is a software engineer and a technology book author. She is currently based in the USA and believes in democratizing opportunities and brings knowledge of the latest developments in the fast-moving field of technology to early professionals, students, and keep them up to date and well-equipped for their professional careers. Her initiative, Skill Up with Drishti, enables students and professionals to grow in their career. Next up, we have Lilinoe Harbottle. Lilinoe is a data science with expertise in AI, ML, and cloud technologies. Previously, she led data-driven initiatives for medical robotics at Johnson & Johnson RS Health. She is passionate about the transformative impact of data science in AI and technology in healthcare, and she is excited to share her insights at the upcoming PyCascades 2025, which she did in a great talk earlier. Next, we have Nasim Sanati. At the Elrod Lab, Nasim focuses on advanced consortium-level biomedical data integration, harmonization, and embedding-driven machine learning applications. She is passionate about tackling the complexity of large-scale biomedical knowledge graphs to transform data into actionable insights. Welcome. And then 4th panelist is Parul Gupta. Parul is a senior production engineer at Meta, where she works with the Python Foundation team. Previously, she worked with interactive computing and contributed to accelerating the machine learning authoring space. She is a C Python triager and also an early contributor to FairLearn, an open source Python library to improve fairness in AI systems. Parul is also an advocate for bridging the gender gap in technology and has mentored several aspiring technologists to build a career in the field of computer science. Woo! In her free time, Parul enjoys dancing, painting, and traveling. All right, welcome. Hello, everybody. So we're going to open it up with our panel by just asking to start. Can each of you just say a hello? We'll go down the line and then share one thing you're passionate about in your current role. We'll start at the end.
Hi, everyone. I'm Parul, and I'm a production engineer at Meta. I work for Python Language Foundation team, and one thing that really stands out in that space is that Python is a very broad language in the sense of how many user base, how large and how broad the user base is. So talking to people who have little to no experience in coding or in programming in general to being very core developers or advanced users, tackling that entire range and the entire use cases is really fascinating, and that's what makes me really love this.
Right on. Hey everyone, I'm Nasim. I'm a computational biologist at the Elrod Lab at OHS Unite Cancer Institute. I'm going to say that I'm passionate about the team I'm involved in. I feel very fortunate to be a part of the team that Kyle Elrod is a part of, and Brian Walsh directly kind of mentors us.
Hi everyone, my name is Lilinoe Harbottle. I'm a data scientist and I'm passionate about medical robotics, and I build machine learning solutions at a startup in San Francisco.
Hi everyone, I'm Drishti Jain. So I work at the intersection of both software development and machine learning to bring new users to people in the creative industry. And I'm a lot passionate about that, along with being very passionate about using technology to help the underprivileged through my nonprofit organization.
Love it. Thank you, everybody. And I've got a few questions. We're going to start with Lilinoe. So you've worked at the intersection of data science, AI, and healthcare. What motivated you to focus on these fields? And what has been the most fulfilling projects you've worked on? Big question.
Thank you for the question. So I think my main motivations were just my curiosity and my passion for continuous learning. And one of, I guess, the most fulfilling projects I recently worked on would be with Auris Health Medical Robotics and being part of the software team that enabled over 35,000 biopsies for lung cancer in over 120 hospitals in the United States.
Thanks. And for Nasim, your multidisciplinary background is fascinating. How has combining computer science with biology shaped your approach to solving real-world problems?
Yeah, I think I look at it as a tool or a bigger sandbox that you have, whether it's biology or law or other disciplines, you can easily use these coding techniques, programming, whatnot to kind of solve problems in a more efficient way. And I think I was pretty lucky to come across this program that I think it was put together by a doctor. So theoretically, everything was aligning. A very simple example of this would be like a for loop with 4 loops in your neurons. Yeah, it was pretty eye-opening and a really cool experience.
And for Parul, working with Python at a large tech company also sounds exciting. What's one challenge you faced managing Python ecosystems, and how did you overcome it?
I think one of the major challenges in the Python language management or in the ecosystem in general is that the broad user base, as I just mentioned before, it's basically you cannot have one thing that fits everyone. People who have little to no experience in programming need a more user-friendly tool, whereas advanced programmers need more advanced tooling so that they can interact with the language in a different way. So like seeing each use case and then dealing with them and developing those tools for those particular user cohorts is something that's really challenging, at the same time, really fulfilling.
And Drishti, you've authored tech books and started a nonprofit while working as a software engineer. How do you balance these roles, and how has your work in social entrepreneurship informed your technical career?
Thanks for the question. Firstly, how do I manage this? I think I'm passionate about both things very equally. So I think if you do something that's passion-driven, you kind of figure out how to manage time well. So that's how I've been able to balance both things, wherein working on my core software skills and my day job in the 5 days, and then spending my weekend or late evenings working on the nonprofit organization. And that is what has mainly been it.
Yeah. Yep. I'm also coming from the nonprofit world, so love that.
Yep.
Impact. So let's talk about the impact of open source and community work. This is going to be open questions for all panelists. And let's talk about how community contributions have played a significant role in shaping your careers. So first question for all panelists, what inspired you to get involved in open source or tech communities?
I can go first. So during my undergrad, in my second year of university, that is wherein I got involved with PyLadies, interestingly. So I started learning C as the first language, but I was very intrigued by Python and its simplicity. And then I found a community in my city in India of PyLadies, got involved, and interestingly gave my first workshop in Python at a PyLadies event. So community helped me look at how other people are approaching learning tech, because I was new to computer science. It was my undergrad. I didn't know anything about it before it. So community is what gives you like a sense of belonging and like a guiding group which will help you reach heights.
I can go next. I think one of the major things is that I had several hobby projects and research work going on. And at that point, I realized that I'm using a lot of open source tooling, a lot of libraries such as NumPy, Pandas, and whatnot that we do in all of the AI development. And then I realized that I want to give back to the community because I'm using it and now I have the power, the resources to actually give it back. So in any possible way, I just started getting involved in the open source world and started writing code, being in discussions, and getting it more and more involved.
I can go next. So I think my answer relates to a little bit of both of yours. I joined a group called Women Who Code, and through that community, I found mentors who encouraged me to join the open source community. So it's kind of integration of both of your ideas, and it was really impactful, and it made me want to further contribute and continue to engage in the discussions.
Yeah, I think learning as well, and giving. I would say my master's thesis was published, and then I can contribute the code and the findings, and that way the method could be used in the clinical trials and stuff like that, which I found pretty cool. But I really appreciate open source because without it, like as a DJ, you can't really remix your song and make something useful.
I love that all your answers are really rooted in giving back and learning and continual growth, because PyLadies has given that to so many, so that's fabulous. Next question, can you share a project or initiative where your contributions made a visible impact?
I have one. So there is this project called Fair Learn. It is basically an open source community-driven Python library used to assess and mitigate bias in the AI models. I started working in that project when it was like really early in collaboration with Microsoft at that time. And over there, I developed several fairness constraints based on all the fairness in AI research that was going around some 5-6 years ago. And that really, I've seen that in the past 5 years, it has grown so much. Like in the last month, it had some 400,000 downloads or something like that. And I was like, wow, this has truly escalated, and I do see the impact now.
Sure, I can share. So I last year was working in a research lab, part-time as a student researcher, on teachable AI systems, which were effectively like AI agentic-based tutoring systems for students in elementary and high school. So I was able to actually create agents with the power of LLMs, but also because it is an educational setting, you want to feed the correct information to students. And having an agent that learns, that is able to teach student in their learning curve. So somebody might grasp topic A fast, but be a bit slow in topic B. So the agent helps you to also master topic B. So I saw a lot of visible impact in actual users from elementary and high school students who were actually using my agentic AI model. So that was a direct impact that I saw, and also how I was able to see it in action as to how does AI actually can help us a lot, which is otherwise humanly not possible for one single tutor or teacher to go and know everything about a student. But AI can do that. So it was great to see that impact.
Okay, so building on this idea of high school students, I recently mentored a high school student who was on a very strict budget, and so I encouraged her to look into open source, and she was able to successfully build a Raspberry Pi system using open source software to monitor air quality on a reservation. And that was so powerful, especially for a high school student who may not be surrounded by role models or the type of environment that would nurture this type of talent and growth. So it was really amazing that there's so many people contributing to this community.
Yeah, it's really hard to see who's using your open source contributions. But I think one of the memorable ones for me is mentoring a student when I was a Google Summer of Code mentor, and him putting his work out there and being able to get a job from that, it was pretty satisfying to me. I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool.
was a teaching assistant for a point of time. So it just teaches you so much. And I loved that your answers were really rooted in like a newer person or a younger person trying to rise up. And you never know your impact, but here you are sharing that. So that's fabulous. And I'd also like to ask, how do you see open source evolving in the future, particularly in terms of accessibility and inclusivity?
I can go first. So I feel open source is going to play a major, major role. I think all of us saw it in the past few weeks of having closed LLMs and having an open source LLM and the impact it had on the industry. So not just Python, but even in the broader AI race, it is the impact that open source creates is something that's unparalleled to anything else that's out there. So I think people will keep contributing to open source, and open source is like a place which is much more accessible. If you just have a computer, you know an issue that's there, you raise a PR, whether you're sitting in any part of the world, the original repo is maintained by somebody sitting on the other side of the planet. It doesn't matter. It's your skill, your idea, your problem-solving skills that gets recognized in open source. So I think open source is here to live.
I actually think that if open source will not exist, then the tech industry will not exist anymore. I feel like it is the core foundational thing that strengthens the whole industry in general. So utilizing it as well as contributing to it is the core, and that is the future. That has to be there.
Yeah, if anything doesn't drastically change politically or by law, I think it's a safe bet to say that open source is always going to kind of go hand in hand with like competing against closed source, and DeepSeek was like a good example of that we just saw.
And I think adding on to these other ideas, it sounds like that we enjoy sharing ideas. We enjoy the discussions outside of this conference, and so having that community even from far away, especially to our online participants, is really important, no matter the climate, right?
So along with that, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start contributing to open source but doesn't know where to begin?
I would say think about what interests you the most. If contributing to open source becomes a chore for you, you're never going to get deeper into it. And so see what's interesting to you, start there, and start small. You cannot build an LLM or AI models or like whatnot and start publicizing it on day one. You need to try with a simple print hello world or a simple for loop, and then iterate and build on top of it.
Yes, completely agreed. Like, for somebody who's starting new to contributing to open source, firstly, don't get scared looking at like huge repositories. They've been there for years. So also taking the timeline it took to write those many lines of code. If you simply just divide the number of lines of code with the first commit repo and today's state, you'll see that it's not a lot that happens like in a single day. It is doable, it's achievable. So look at that statistic and motivate yourself that it's always the right time to start contributing, and there are multiple ways in which you can get involved contributing to open source.
I think find your community. Once you figure out what resonates the most with you, start the discussion, and even the smallest contribution can make a huge impact.
Yeah, I loved Sage's talk with the robotics. You can start somewhere like there, or just trying to program your Christmas LED lights, or something fun, and push it up to GitHub and see where it goes, just one step at a time.
I've also seen, there's also this saying that goes, software development is a process, not a destination.
Yes. So if I could ask then, what challenges have you faced as women in technology, and how have you navigated them? Big question.
Does anyone want to answer?
I can go. So I do retrospect my life a lot in terms of where I've come from and how far I've come to. And in that regard, when I did my undergrad a few years ago, at that point, the female to male ratio was 1:8 in my class. In the junior batches, it further went down to 1:12. It didn't improve, it actually deteriorated. And then when I started working in the industry in general, I used to be the only female in the team. And I think in the first job that I actually did, I was the only female in the entire org. So yeah, it does create issues. It does make you feel that, do I fit in? You do start getting an implicit bias within yourself, and that is what really messes up with your mind. You need to like overcompensate and build on top of what you believe to get out of that, the pity hole that you dig in for yourself. And that's basically what's difficult.
I think like there are a ton of challenges that anybody who's new would face. And being a woman in tech, what has helped me overcome any kind of issue is just to seek guidance from people in the community. If you go to any meetup or any community event, you'll see people who are in the same space. Plus, you'll see mentors. You'll see people who have experienced it. So you can go talk to people and say that, I saw this is happening. Is this the right way to approach it? Or this is what I'm facing at work. Can you help me navigate through this? I think challenges will be there at every step of our career. Seeking good mentors is what helps to overcome it.
I think that one thing I've noticed is that there's very limited representation in leadership roles in some companies for women, and it's a little difficult for us to identify with leadership. But on the flip side, it's really interesting and empowering to see PyCascades collaborating with PyLadies and all these other discussions in other spaces, other communities where it's welcoming and having this dialogue. So it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, other than the physical challenges of becoming a mom or stuff like that, I would say in my classes there were a lot of diversities. There were neurodiversities, there were ethnicity diversity, there were identity diversity. I mean, we're humans, we go from spectrum to spectrum. We don't just fit into groups. And there are definitely people out there that see you as humans. They don't like just when you walk into the room, they don't just like look at you like, oh, hey, here's a girl, that just came into the computer science class or something. There are so many folks out there that want to help you, that want to mentor you, that if anything goes wrong, that would stand by you. All of those things, I think, has happened to me, which was pretty cool. Don't be intimidated by it. And I would say that when you get into that learning process and when you set your mind into appreciating what you're learning, things don't kind of matter anymore, as because you have the power and capability to set the tone in the room as much as anybody else in the room does.
So going one step further, do you have thoughts on how companies could make a difference?
I think just hosting community building events or spaces, just like a conference, like there are so many things to learn from so many different people from different walks of life. I think if something like a conference, but say in a smaller fashion, could be there with companies wherein it's like maybe once a month or even if it's once a quarter, an event like that wherein employees in a company can talk to other folks. Because when companies are big, you don't know what's happening in the other department or what's happening in marketing, what's happening in sales. But it's not just about numbers, but also just seeking guidance as to you might want to switch careers, you might want to grow up the ladder. So having like mini conferences, I would call them, can be good initiatives that companies can do.
I think it's not just the exterior of the company with, like, let's say, sponsoring conferences or being there. It's also the interior culture of the company. So if the company is supportive and, like, helping you navigate, finding mentors for you, or like, I mean, they don't have to find mentors for you, but they need to be supportive for you when you're trying to navigate and finding mentors, like, and you're building your connection, your network, your community. That's what really benefits like a person who wants to grow or who wants to find a niche for themselves.
Like a culture of mentorship.
Yes.
Totally.
I think that what a lot of companies have are affinity groups or business resource groups targeting specific underrepresented populations and communities. And I think having that stance is really powerful because it enables you to find mentors, peers within some larger companies. And it turns out that these are wonderful ways to connect with communities outside of that company as well.
Yeah, I think it comes down to your coworkers, your boss, your immediate folks that you work with. If in an interview you have the same right of choosing who you want to work with as well, you have that power. But it does make a difference when the boss man walks up and treats you, identical to another person that may not be a female or whatnot. It does matter.
So speaking of mentorship, what role does mentorship play in fostering diversity, and how have you contributed or benefited from mentorship, if you're open to sharing?
I think when I first started out, I was part of Women Who Code, and they really helped me find the community and really uplift me in terms of the way I was thinking, the way I was doing things. Even within the company, I've had wonderful female mentors. One of them is actually here, who's actually helped a lot for me to grow within the company as well. In terms of giving back, I've always been into giving back, and so I am an active mentor with rewriting the code as well as the code labs. So we do have like monthly sessions or ad hoc sessions, things like that, to ensure that people, women and other representative groups are getting the right mentorship to have their path sorted out and achieve their goals.
I can share in my experience. So for me as an undergrad student, I got selected by Goldman Sachs and IIE, and I was called a VTech Goldman Sachs Scholar. As a part of that, I got mentorship by a VP at Goldman Sachs for 6 months, and we're still in touch. So he was a VP then he moved roles across countries, moved to a different job, but we are still connected even apart from the 6 months of mentorship that was there. And being in my second year, which is like the sophomore year, it was an insight as to how do you approach the corporate world, what do you look at things at. And my first job out of undergrad was in fintech. So Goldman Sachs fintech, I got an introduction to a very closed community that's fintech because it's finance. But having that mentorship really helped me to see the world beyond as a student. After being a student, I will be in the professional world. So that gave me an insight and a guidance as to what would that look like. And that, interestingly, led me to start a lot of clubs on campus. And I started mentoring a lot of people to firstly get this scholarship. And how do you approach, right from filling forms, it's as basic as it gets. If you don't know how do you fill the right applications or the deadlines, how would you get these opportunities? So I've mentored since as soon as I got opportunities. The next time I was a mentor to a lot of students. And I've continued that till now, mentoring people to break into even getting their first job out of college. So I'm an active mentor in that space.
So I can go next. I feel like we have these common themes of mentorship and belonging to a community, and I think the idea is that it's very difficult to, bring about change alone. It makes a lot of sense to work with others when we mentor and uplift communities.
Yeah, I'm gonna think about this when I was going to PSU. Mark Jones was my mentor. He's one of the inventors of Haskell, which absolutely blew my mind. And then Shannon McQueenie at OHSU. she's definitely a force in the field. Kyle Elrod, always just full of very cool ideas of putting everything together. Brian Walsh, our senior engineer, pretty fortunate to have had these mentors in my life. As far as giving back, I think that Google Summer of Code mentorship was pretty cool. And every time anybody that came up to me and asked me a question, I tried my best to take my time and answer it.
And so, as we wrap up, I'd like to ask each of you to share one key takeaway or piece of advice for our audience. And what's one thing you wish you had known when you started your career in tech?
One thing that I wish I would have known when I started my career in tech was nobody knows everything. Like, being new to the industry, you assume that people know everything and only then they are so successful. But I think that was my first learning, that nobody knows everything. Everybody learns on the go and just creates things. That's the beauty of tech. And one key takeaway for the audience today, I would say, is just be curious and don't think that you need to know everything to create a really big impact. In my experience, nobody knows everything. Everybody is very curious. That is what leads them to create new things. So if you just have curiosity and the willingness to learn on the go, I think that's the biggest key takeaway.
Okay, I'll go next. I would say not everything goes as you plan to do. You'll have your fair shares of wins, you'll have your fair shares of losses. Don't get intimidated by all of the failures that you face. Those are actually the learnings that you should take away. In fact, it's not just your failures that you should learn from, it's also failures of others that you've seen or who've told you. Learn from them and just continue growing. That's all.
I think it's also understanding what you're really good at, and being aware of that. And from there, I guess my takeaway is also to encourage community and finding that space where you know you're going to thrive.
Honestly, I wish I knew how fast AI is going to come along. I knew it was coming, but not this fast. Yeah.
Oh man, I wish I wasn't holding a mic so I could clap, because all of those hit home really hard. So great thoughts. Any other key takeaways before we close out?
I would just say create tech and enjoy the process. It's amazing that we are able to write code. We write basically English words, and that creates magic, makes things work. So I think also feel proud and happy that you're literally creating magic.
I would say just start now.
Yes. I see.
Take the risk. Yeah. Take the risk. Do it. Don't wait 5 years. Don't hold that project that you want to build, and sell. Just take the risk. Do it.
And also, again, I'm being repetitive, but finding the right community and really growing in that space.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to our panelists for your insights and stories on our audience and joining us. We hope you leave inspired to contribute to tech and open source in your unique way. So thank you very much for having us today.